Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Fran. I create content on self-love, healing, and conscious living, and everything I've learned on my own healing journey. Since I've already been through the learning curve of intuitive eating, I thought it'd be useful for me to share some lessons I've learned and also address the concerns that you have directly. I hope you enjoy this video. So the number one concern is that I will put on weight with intuitive eating. I think this is a major concern because when we are giving ourselves this unconditional permission to eat, junk food definitely plays a really big part in our exploration process. I personally did a lot of research on how other people's weight turned out to be, and also I thoroughly studied the cases that Ashley and Elise share in the book, Intuitive Eating. And there's no absolute guarantee that you will put on weight or lose weight, even though a lot of people did after intuitive eating, they did lose weight. Taking myself as an example, I lost about 2 to 3 pounds, as I've mentioned in my video, honest review from intuitive eating. And I wanted to share the graph of my weight fluctuation. So this graph is a reflection of my weekly weight during the 5-month period when I was trying out intuitive eating. And I think it's kind of typical based on the research on other people's experience as well, because a lot of them do claim that they have lost weight. Each dot in this graph represents the data on every Sunday. As you can see, despite fluctuations, the long-term trend is still heading down. I also wanted to explain the spikes in the graph. Some of it reflects my initial stage of binge eating, when I just started to eat all sorts of food without excluding some certain types of food. Some of them directly reflect the next day weight, which is kind of like a spike because I have this large amount of residual food inside of my body. But normally after 2 to 3 days, the weight seems to go back to the original level without intentional diet. Now, I wanted to talk about why I actually lost weight through intuitive eating. Because for the longest time, I have been suppressing my needs to eat outside of my healthy menu. If we turn our back on the food that actually satisfy us, that actually meet our needs in some way, it kind of gets accumulated. You know, you're gonna have an outburst at some point. A lot of people actually start their day perfectly in the morning and they stick to schedule very strictly. They only eat the healthy food that they think are inside their comfort zone. But at 3 or 4 o'clock, something happens or their emotions get triggered, and they could just have an outburst with binge eating episode, and they could crash easily 4,000 calories and just bury all the efforts they have spent in perfectly controlling their day. On the contrary, now when I crave for sweets, I would eat them directly. For example, when I get up one morning and I want some cake, so I would go buy that cake and I would eat and enjoy it slowly, probably half of the cake, and I would feel satisfied and I would feel peaceful throughout the day. So for the rest of the day, I tend to choose some healthy food voluntarily. Like I would want to eat something like grain or high in fiber or high in protein, because I'm at peace and my body chooses to eat something lighter for the rest of the day. And this accumulates less calories in total compared to the binge eating episodes. And you can do the math which situation would cause us to consume more or less calories. And that's why I think I was able to lose a couple of pounds and show this trend of weight declining in the long run. I know a lot of YouTubers, they might put out this shining guarantee, or a lot of articles that argue that you're definitely going to lose weight after intuitive eating, because it's like you achieved this healthy state with food. But for a lot of cases, everybody's healthy level of weight varies. For example, if you have an anorexia, like you have been under eating for a very long time, that you don't get enough nutrition at all. So when you do try out intuitive eating, when you do allow yourself to eat all sorts of food, it's likely that your weight will go up, because that's the weight level you're supposed to be That's the healthy point for you. But for a lot of people who have been binge eating, who have had this unhealthy relationship with food, they try to use food to fill their void for emptiness, it actually exceeds their original healthy level of weight. So it's likely that when they build this healthy foundation with food, their weight is going to go down at some point. So we cannot actually predict for individual case if you're going to put on weight or not. I do wanted to point out a very important thing is that weight fluctuation, like immediate or short-term weight fluctuation, does not reflect changes in body fat. According to a scientific study, it requires about 6,600 calories to put on 1 kilogram of fat. So weight gain is more like a long-term thing. It's not very likely that we're going to put on fat overnight. But a lot of people can be very curious, like the next day of the binge eating, of the overeating, their weight tend to shoot up 3 to 5 pounds. But I wanted to explain because a great contributing factor could be water, because water makes up about 60% of our body composition. And for example, personally, I have noticed on the days when I drink a lot of water and when I intake high sodium food, the next day my weight tends to goes up a bit. As I dig deeper into that weight gain, as reflected from my SMART scale, it shows that normally the body fat and bone mass, muscle mass, and BMI kind of just remain the same, stabilized, but the water rate would severely increase, sometimes up to 8%. So SMART scale is something I definitely recommend if you are curious about your short-term or immediate weight gains, just so that you will be reassured that it's not actual body fat increase. Concern number 2. With intuitive eating, I will go out of control with junk food, or I will only eat junk food. Even though one of the most essential principles of intuitive eating says eat whatever, whenever, it might leave the impression that intuitive eating and healthy eating kind of contradict each other. Yes, one of the most important steps is to give yourself this unconditional permission to eat, which includes all sorts of food. But instead of turning us against certain types of food or excluding some possibilities, intuitive eating actually allows us to explore food with this openness, curiosity, and non-judgment. Eventually, it aims to help us achieve the state of feeling safe around all sorts of food without labeling specific ones as bad or good. Taking myself as an example, I wanted to say that at the initial stage, it really is hard for me to stop eating junk food. It kind of becomes non-stoppable for the first couple of days. But please keep in mind, this stage won't last forever. You will stop after a couple of days. When I was going through it, I kept telling myself that it's only temporary, because at this initial stage, the only important thing is to reduce food attachment by supplying enough or oversupply of food, just to provide this food certainty for myself so that I won't pick out or gorge in meals. For example, I indulged myself with all sorts of chips like barbecue, chili, and sour cream and all that, which is, I bought tons of huge boxes of chips, which is good for a year's supply. From getting triggered every single time to occasionally getting triggered, it took me about 3 months. From occasionally being triggered to rarely getting triggered, it took me additional 2 months. As the author Rash explains it, the more someone makes peace with all foods, the less allure formerly forbidden foods might have. That food might be delicious, but that food may be delicious. That food might be delicious, but you're able to stop when you have enough. And I wanted to try to explain this point from many 2 aspects. From a psychological perspective, since junk food is something that we've forbidden ourselves to have or even thinking about, it has been elevated to this extra special place for us. The more we become generous in letting ourselves consume something, the less special it becomes. You will end up discovering it was actually this allowance that we're rebelling against. That was what triggers us to binge eat in the first place. When I was in high school, I was away in boarding school. And during the school days, from Monday to Friday, I would normally not allow myself to eat junk food at all, and also not to consume something, like anything, after 6 p.m. So when I went home on weekends, I would start this full-blown binge eating because I only got 2 days to eat everything. And there was one time I ate too much of the jelly and I was hospitalized for eating too much. Jelly might be such an ordinary food to you because it's easy to purchase and it's cheap, it's everywhere. But to me, it was so special at the time because I didn't get to eat it in school days. Now that I've already ate so much of it, I got pretty much very sick of it. I wouldn't eat it if you pay me to eat it. Another reason why we will stop after some time is because of body attunement. When we're children, we are born with this ability to eat intuitively. For example, when we're hungry, we would cry for food and we would stop when we were full without parents' interference. We wouldn't give much of second thought on, oh no, this chocolate bar has too much sugar and carbs in it. We would simply enjoy it and feel satisfied afterwards and move on to play with other stuff. But it was only after we grew up, when we have been instilled with social values and those framework to indicate how and when we should eat, then we stop to eat intuitively. When we're practicing intuitive eating, our body and mind are in harmony. So is food and our mind. When it needs nutrition, it sends out signals for us to choose healthy food, like food that's high in protein, food that's green, and food that energizes our body and make us feel good. All we need to do is to trust our body when it's exploring the balance constantly itself. In addition, I wanted to quickly touch upon the myth that a lot of people think that intuitive eating works better than a diet in terms of weight loss. So they try to use this as a way to manipulate their weight or body image or body shape. Please keep in mind that one of the first lessons and the foundation towards intuitive eating is to abandon your diet mentality and be comfortable at your own healthy weight level. As the authors have pointed out, there's one type of mindset that hinders the progress of the food addiction fighting process, which is unconscious diet. They also call it pseudo dieting, means that you probably are physically off a diet, but secretly you're still on diet. I did the same thing for the first 3 months. Now that I look back, I feel like it definitely hinders my progress of eating disorder recovery. I did try to give myself this permission to eat, this unconditional, unjudgmental way of eating, and I did indulge myself a lot. But there are still very unconscious ways that I'm doing this diet thing. For example, I still do calories count, I still do carbs count every day. I would fuel myself intentionally about like 3 to 5 bottles of Diet Coke because I didn't want to feel hungry. And also I would intentionally delay my eating. The consequence is that I started to have frequent relapses. Just when I thought I was getting better, like the relapses are just kind of dragged me down and I felt really upset, and I kind of just lost the confidence in the intuitive eating process. I had to be brutal honest to myself that nothing in essence changed if I still hold this diet mentality. And that's the moment when I decided to just abandon it as a whole. And that's the time when I started to see real progress. Making peace with food made my life so much easier because I don't have to spend this energy being constantly on guard and battling with food. If you're still on the stage, please don't be upset because I think this is a learning curve. It's trial and error phase. Just give yourself a lot of confidence in this. Have some patience because you will get through it as well. Alright my friends, I hope this video is helpful in addressing some of the most common concerns that you might have for intuitive eating, because at the beginning I had those concerns and I had nobody to turn to for help. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you wanted to watch more videos like this, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.